Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Board Finance and Audit Committee meeting for May the 20th, 2021. The meeting is called to order, and the records will reflect that in attendance are Board Vice Chair Nancy Miller and Directors Ernie Camacho and Jim Gelmetti. So welcome everybody in the committee, and as I mentioned to all of you around the state, we appreciate your joining us. We'll start today's meeting as we do each meeting with public comment, and introducing public comment and the process, our committee secretary. Good morning, Mo.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. Welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today, we are hosting this meeting remotely via Zoom. In a moment, we will take public comment, but first, we want to run through some important technical aspects of this meeting for offering public comment. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom application, please use the raise your hand feature typically located at the bottom of your screen so that I may call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing #2 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide their comment. Our court reporter is on the line to record those comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. I will notify you when your time is nearly up. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to the meeting. If you do not wish to provide comment and simply want to watch the meeting, you can do so by logging on to hsr.ca.gov and looking for the link to our live stream. Mr. Chairman, give me one moment. We just had an attendee join, so I'm just going to reiterate. For the member of the public who just joined, if you wish to provide public comment, please use the raise your hand feature, typically located at the bottom of your screen, so that I may call on you to provide your comment. Mr. Chairman, none of the attendees have raised their hand wishing to provide public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mo. And again, for you joining us, we appreciate it, and thank you for being here. I would like to also note that our CFO, Brian Annis, is with us today, as well as our CEO, Brian Kelly, and our our Chief Counsel, Alicia Fowler, as well as our internal audit chief, Paula Rivera. We are going to move into the agenda and start with agenda item number 1, which is the approval of our April 22nd committee meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I assume that's all 4 ayes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ernie, are you with us okay? All right. We'll just reflect for right now. The minutes are approved, and the vote is everyone, with the exception there was no vote from Director Camacho. Moving on to.
Sorry, I voted yes.
Oh, there he is. Okay. All right. We've got a unanimous ayes. On item 2, on any comments from myself, I'd like to suggest to the members that we move through this meeting without review of the Central Valley status report. As each of you are aware, item number 3 on today's board meeting, starting at 11 o'clock this morning, both the CEO, Brian Kelly, and our Chief Operating Officer, Joe Hedges, will be presenting a construction update. That update has information that is more timely than what is in your committee package today. So unless I hear any of my three colleagues who would prefer to have the Central Valley update in this committee hearing, even though the information isn't as current, as I mentioned, it will be in the board meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to have that Central Valley update today? Hearing no one, we will then only today be dealing with our financial report. And for that, good morning, Brian Ennis.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I'm going to be briefing off the financial reports executive summary, which is now on your screen. This is data through March 31st. However, in a few areas where we have more updated information, I'll mention that as well. Starting at the top of this page, we have accounts payable, aging and disputes report. For the month of March, there were no aged invoices or no late payments. So we have a streak now of 50 months without any late payments. The other item I tend to point out here is the second line dispute summary. You'll note the disputes fell about 13.5 million. We've spoken at prior meetings about most of these having to do with the contractor Dragados and some of the future change orders they had filed prior to approval, and that was the nature of the dispute. That did stop growing several months ago. It's fallen here by 13.5 million. The reason for the decrease is due to evaluation of those invoices that came in over several months and eliminating some of the duplicate items. So it's down due to those duplicates. And there were no other significant changes in that area. Moving down to the cash report, you'll note here the Prop 1A bond cash balance at the end of March was down slightly to 48.7 million. There's a note on the bottom of the page, however, that indicates there was a Prop 1A bond sale that the treasurer conducted in April, which resulted in 150 million in Prop 1A proceeds for the authority. So that'll be reflected in a future month's report when we have that in our cash balances. Moving on to cap and trade. The report shows an increase month over month, and that's due to the reflection of the November auction, which was 148 million. It always takes several months for that to be fully processed, for the Air Board to finalize their numbers, for the Department of Finance to do their executive order to allocate the funds, and for the controller to reflect that in the cash balance. But we reflect the November auction. Still to be posted is the February auction, which we estimate around 162 million. There was a cap and trade auction that occurred yesterday. We will not know the results until 1 week from today on May 27th. That's scheduled to be announced what the results were. It does have the potential to be an above average auction for a couple reasons. As has been stated in the past, the Air Board is auctioning some of the unsold credits from the May 2020 auction that was impacted heavily by COVID. And there were also unsold auction credits at the August 2020 auction. So the number of proceeds or allowances offered for sale in this May auction is up about 30% over the amount offered in February. And when we look at the secondary market where prior sold allowances can be resold, that prices on the secondary market look fairly strong as well. So I look forward to notifying the board when we get the results in about a week. But I'll say we're cautiously optimistic. You never know for sure on a market, an auction market like this, what we'll get. But several signs point to perhaps an overperforming auction this time, above average.
Great.
Next slide. So this is our administrative budget and budget for the fiscal year. The 2021 fiscal year is 73 million. Monthly expenditures for March were 4.1 million. You will note there's an upward trend in our monthly expenditure. February was 4 million. March of 2020 was 3.5 million. So that does reflect our progress in filling the new positions that have been authorized by the legislature over time. With 9 months of the fiscal year complete, our total year-to-date expenditures are 33.5 million. Again, we do expect to come in quite a bit under budget for the current year expenditures here in the final 3 months. As far as our vacancies in our filled positions, we do have 260 filled positions of 356 total authorized positions. As far as just maybe note a year-over-year change here in total filled positions relative to March 2020, that's up 48 filled positions. But our team here, our HR team, and our various offices have filled quite a bit more than that. At the bottom bullet on the page here, you'll note that since July of 2019, the authority's actually filled 192 positions. However, when you count for internal promotions and transfers and things like that, sometimes our filling a position results in another vacancy that we have to fill, or a net zero reduction while we catch up. And there's a further update I'll give at the end that looks at the April number as well. Next slide, please. So this is another look at our state staff, but we also add here our consultant utilization. So in the top table here, we show statistics over a 3-year period for state staff and also for the rail delivery partner, RDP. Just thought I'd point out a few things that are changes over a 21-month period. When we look from 18-19 through March of 2021, our state staff there have increased 75 filled positions, and the reduction in utilized RDP full-time equivalents, or FTEs, is a reduction of 52 consultant full-time equivalents. So we are making progress in our what we called our form to function, where we looked at our various functions and what was best performed by state staff and what was best performed by consultants. And again, we're adjusting our staffing to meet that evaluation, which also ties to a California State Auditor report recommendation from a couple years ago. Next slide. So this is our capital outlay report for the month of March. We reflect expenditures of 83.5 million in the top table. That's up about 20 million month over month, down about 20 million from a prior year's month of March. We break it down into different categories. Of the 83.5 million, 69.9 million is related specifically to the construction package expenditures. And in the second bullet, we show what each construction package expended in that month. And then in the next bullet, we show the design build contractor invoice payment only, which here is about 49 million, with CP1 being the bulk of that at about 27.5 million, CP23 at 12.2, and CP4 at 9.2. One of the month-over-month drivers of the increase here was the CP1 work for the intrusion protection barrier, which is underway, and it appears that fluctuates somewhat month to month, but that's one of the main drivers here of the month-over-month increase. The other thing to round out the expenditures for the month were project development, which is in the bottom table here, running about $4.6 million for the month.
Brian, a real quick question. The construction packages on the expenditure side or the CPs, is that forward progress, or is this including any anomalies with change orders?
Well, this includes payments. So if there's a change order implemented, that won't show up on this report until there's invoices coming in against that new change order. So this would include some change orders, but again, we have a future page that shows newly implemented change orders. That's the full amount of those, but many will be invoiced over time.
Is there a way we can break it, maybe even for the board meeting, just break that number out for change orders versus forward progress? Or even offline nights?
Ernie, are you talking about work that was done at risk that we are paying on?
Well, just the work
That was paid?
that was paid, yeah.
Paid?
Just to segregate the change order from work being done. I mean, everything is, even the change order work is forward progress, just to segregate what is contractually obligated versus change orders.
Ernie, if it's a change order, it is contractually obligated.
Well,
So
it's different than the original scope.
okay, so you're asking for
Just with the change
work
order
that,
work.
example is work that is beyond the original award value of approximately $990 million in the CP1 scope.
Yeah. Just so we have an idea, Joe, I'm just, it's, we know what normal progress would be, and so that we're not confusing that normal progress with the change orders. So we just have an idea of what the change orders are.
They're happy to take a look at that and see if there's
It
any
could be
additional
offline.
data.
That's fine, Brian. It's not a
Yeah.
problem. I was curious as to that.
Sure.
I just think, Ernie, everything is change orders at this point, since we've had to change the scope and all of that. So I don't know. There's the original work, we've had to modify it quite a bit. So,
But this is not all change order work, Nancy.
well, yeah, I'm sure they can break it out.
Why don't, Brian, why don't we hook up in between now and the next meeting and work something up? I think that the one thing in the discussion of change orders is within the context of change orders, there's a real difference between some and I think most of the change orders, I believe, are reflective of changes in scope.
Yes.
I think that's what's really important for the committee and the board and the public to know. And a lot of that change in scope is scope that wasn't defined at the time that contracts were let. And I think that would be helpful for all of us to recognize those bases of where the change orders actually came from and what they're for.
Very good. Yeah, and I know I've of course looked at the full board agenda package, and I think further discussion on that from the COO and the CEO later at the full board meeting as well.
Yeah, and Ernie, if you'd like to, when we have that call, if you'd like to sit in on that call with Brian and I, that would be you're certainly welcome.
Thank you.
And to the extent that we could have any of the other members on the committee on the call, Brian, just so we don't bust any of the requirements on open meeting issues. So, okay.
Very good. I believe we can go to the next slide. So this slide is a cumulative total of expenditures to date, going way back to 2006. About 8.2 billion has been expended. 75% of those expenditures have been on construction. The bottom table is showing our federal American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or ARRA, match through March. There was a significant update in April that's not included on this page, but had been reported last month that the federal government did approve an additional almost 600 million. And that'll be on a couple slides forward when we get to the quick report for the month of April. But as this report shows, our total federal match is 2.5 billion. And as of the end of March, we're about 1.6 billion approved, with 900 million at the federal government. And again, they've approved another almost 600 million of that. So we're down to a little bit above 300 million left. Next slide. Contracts and expenditures. Number of contracts fairly steady here, no change month over month. The value of contracts on the second line is up about 86 million. That's primarily due to a utility-related provisional sum being added to contract value for AT&T and PG&E for CP1. And looking at the small business utilization, notice that's fairly flat month over month as well, 21.2%. And our number of small businesses actively working on the project is 613 small businesses. Next slide. So this is our contingency summary. I want to note again, this is based on our 2019 baseline. Of course, the 2020 business plan does outline new costs, new contingency, and we'll be bringing that to the board as a new baseline to adopt in the coming months. But until that board action happens, we continue to reflect the last approved baseline. In terms of use of contingency, it was fairly low in the month of March. We reflect 7 million here for various smaller change orders. We'll note that provisional sum amount I mentioned on the last slide for AT&T and PG&E, that does get reported in the CVSR for the month of March. In terms of the reporting on this page, we had reported that provisional sum amount several months ago in this on this page when it was approved in internal governance, but it was fully executed in the month of March. So that's why you see it reflected in the CVSR change order summary, but not reflected here. Next slide. So this is our what we call the flash report, or the look ahead to next month's F&A reporting, looking at the reporting month of April. Overall, capital outlay, if I start at the bottom of the top table, capital outlay expenditures preliminarily are coming in about 71 million, down about 12 million a month over month. You'll see the reduction is in the DB invoice amounts, and also additionally the total CP work. I know one of the drivers there I'd mentioned before, intrusion protection work in CP1 is underway, but a little less in invoiced in April that was invoiced in March. The other thing to bring into the total here is we did receive about 11 million in invoices from the Caltrain electrification project. That project sponsor tends to let a couple months accumulate at a time and then submit a package of invoices or a series of months for reimbursement. And so we did have a $11 million from our bookend amount of money for Caltrain. Looking at the bottom two tables, further progress in hiring vacant positions in April, net reduction of 3, taking our rate down to about 26%. And then, as we've alluded to last meeting and this one, we have in April received a additional tranche of federal approvals on our ARA match. and so now reflect that the federal government has approved almost 2.2 billion of the match, and remaining match to approve is a little over 300 million. We have responded to FRA questions, Federal Railroad Administration questions on the remaining 338 million on their desk. So we are hopeful that in the shorter term we'll be able to close down the ARA match fully as well. And that completes the report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions for CFO Annis from any of the members? Hearing none, that completes the agenda for today's meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, it is going to be a short meeting today because we're dealing with the Central Valley update during the board meeting. For those of you, the public, who may have joined it and didn't hear that comment earlier. So that will be a part of our meeting at 11 o'clock this morning. With that, thank you all for joining us, and thank you, committee members, and we'll see you all again at 11 at the board meeting. Until then, this meeting is adjourned, and good morning.